Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Office of the Prime Minister's weekly press briefing. We are going to be very quick on this Friday afternoon as we speak with the Minister for Economic Development, Mr. Senator Michael Halkitis. As you know, we are just days away now from the presentation of the mid-year budget. We will discuss that and other financial matters which are pending. So we'll get things rolling now. Minister Halkitis, welcome.
Good afternoon, all. Pleasure to see all of you. I mean, a few of you who come out on a Friday afternoon. So thank you very much, Mrs. Adley, for inviting me today. It's kind of a busy Friday afternoon, but I wanted to come and spend a few moments with you. Just to, I'll say a few things, and then I'll just open it up for questions so we can move right along. First thing I want to say is that you would have heard the discussion on the preliminary report of the IMF on the Bahamas, and the full report has been released, and it is up on the IMF website. It's a lengthy report, 86 pages, but it reiterates that the economy of the Bahamas continues to recover and grow, 14% in 2022, 4.3% last year, and forecasted at 2.3% for 2024. They also confirmed that inflation is on a downward trend since the middle of 2022, and they expect that to continue. So the growth is strong, the fiscal deficit is down, and the debt load, the percentage of debt to GDP, continues to trend downwards. Strong banking sector with good liquidity, and the number of bad loans decreasing, so that is also a good sign, and generally a positive pitch on the economy of the Bahamas. Of course, we are always wary of the potential for natural disaster and other external factors that can threaten our growth, but the news is good, and it continues to be good. They've made several suggestions, for example, on the operation of the state-owned enterprises and the need for government to continue to seek to control their spending. They made some suggestions on the adoption of the global minimum, the OECD suggested global minimum tax, and certain other suggestions on fiscal transparency. They also urged us to take advantage of opportunities in climate financing as a way to reduce the cost of our borrowing, which we are doing. And so, once again, we thank them for very balanced report, and we will continue to study it and implement those portions of the report that we feel are advantageous to us. You might know the second point is that we are in full preparation mode for our mid-year budget, which will be presented to Parliament on the 21st of February, which is week after next. So preparations are in full stride for that, meetings with the various ministries and agencies to assess their progress so far for the first half of the year and plan for the second half of the year and make any necessary adjustments that we see given changes in priorities and developments for the first half of the year. Generally, we're positive, we're generally on track. I know there was some commentary about a so-called bad first quarter. I would just like to say that, as all of you will be watching the game tomorrow, or the day after tomorrow, the Super Bowl, there's 4 quarters to a game, there's 4 quarters to a financial year, and we fully expect to be within the range of meeting our targets when we look to the full year, because we know that the second half of the year is generally the time when the government revenues perform the best. The third thing I wanted to raise, and then before I open it to questions, is there has been a lot of talk and a lot of coverage about the difficulties at the Inland Revenue Department, particularly with business license renewals, and I want to begin by apologizing to all those affected for the difficulties that they have had. We have accelerated our attention to that area recently, and I am advised that we are already beginning to see some stark improvements to what was going on, and within the next week or so, we should have put those issues behind us. So just to thank the public for their patience and apologize once again for the inconvenience. I just wanted to touch on those, and I'm prepared to answer any questions that the press might have on any subject related to finance or economics. Yes. Mm-hmm.
We see a lot happening as it relates to crime, raising concerns in light of the recent travel advisories issued by some countries globally. Any concerns of that impacting on the economy? Should tourism see any negative impact from this crime issue?
Yeah, this advisory seems to be a bit different than the others because, you know, if you know the advisory, our rating, so to speak, didn't change. I think we're level 2 and remained at a level 2. It appears that this particular one has gotten a lot of attention in the mainstream media, social media, etc. So we are our partners at tourism and in the industry are doing their best to counteract. We believe that the Bahamas still is a safe place to visit. It, you know, we would not like to see it get to the point where it becomes an issue or a big issue when people are making decisions as to where to vacation. And so definitely, given the fact that it has garnered, you know, it's been released, picked up in the mainstream media, and we see things on social media now, we have to accelerate our sort of counteraction to make sure that it does not get to the point where we see significant numbers of you know, cancellations to the point where it begins to impact the industry. We do not want to get to that so-called tipping point where, you know, once you get to a certain point, you know, there's no turning back, and people start to use that as a factor in their decisions. We don't think it has gotten to that point, but we need to continue to work to make sure that it doesn't. I'm not saying, you don't have people who have been influenced by it, but from our information, bookings continue to be strong, arrivals continue to come, so we just need to make sure that it does not impact us.
So would you say you remain, I guess, optimistic,
Mm-hmm.
even though we're seeing what we're seeing in terms of the crime trends, the homicides are
Yeah.
still
Unfortunately.
outside of the advisory?
Yeah, well, yes. Unfortunately, over the years we have experienced what are called spikes, where we see, you know, January was a horrible month in terms of that, and we're, you know, the government has done some things and the police are doing some things. You see the government. We will be in the Senate to complete the amendments to the Bail Act to continue that legislative part of it. You see the police and their initiatives in terms of anti-gang initiatives, increase in saturation patrols, and so, you know, the intention is to put a halt to it as best we can, and so that, you know, when we look back over the year, we're not averaging what we did in January. Hopefully we don't have any more, but, you know, hopefully that is a spike that does not perpetuate throughout the year. So when I say that, I mean, it's not, we won't have 20 homicides every month, and it's just unfortunate that it happened in the spurt, and then we had the reaction, and of course people become concerned. But we are optimistic, and we are confident that the actions and of the police, particularly in addressing the spike immediately, will have some impact. And then we have to continue to work on the other prongs of the crime plan, meaning, you know, we have to continue to focus on things like alternatives for young people, rehabilitation for offenders, swift punishment, so that those who violate the law know that they will be quickly apprehended and put through the legal system, and it's not a joke, so to speak, where people have no fear of being punished.
I know you mentioned that, you know, budget preparations are still underway. Is there any specific measures that Bahamians can expect to see with those still, you know, grappling with the high cost of living? Especially since I know the Prime Minister has repeatedly said that tackling that is a priority for his administration.
Where we can, the process is still ongoing. We have done as far as we could with the tools available to the government in terms of reduction in duties on things like building materials and food. We have done a lot of that. We continue to see where we can even go. I mean, a lot of it is zero. We are looking at, we have some research being done on the whole supply chain to see how, if there's any sort of government intervention that can bring some savings in that way. So we had said before that we will address the issue of the impact of the changes in the boat registration for particularly those small boat owners and those in the family islands. So you will see that correction being made. And normally at the mid-year, you don't see a lot of measures. And so you might not see a lot. You might see one or two. We continue, we present week after next. Today, next week, we continue to meet with the agencies to, fine tune. Most of the major impact that you see will come in the full budget, which is about 3 short months away.
Former Prime Minister Dr. Goodman has basically criticized the Davis administration for allowing to expire the tax-free zone. The situation that was a part of the legislation. He said it could have been renewed, but it appears this government didn't.
I think he's talking about the what he termed the over the hill initiative. If you'll recall, there was a lot of controversy when that was done because it did not include all of over the hill. It included some selective constituencies, and if you remember, our member of parliament at the time for Angliston, and still the member of parliament for Angliston, was very critical that she felt that it included areas like Baintown and Centerville and St. Barnabas that were at the time represented by F&M members of parliament, where she, being the member of parliament for Angliston, which is the same demographic, the same area, the same people, so to speak, was excluded. And so it was very controversial. What we found is, the second point I'll make before I go on, is that legislation of that sort, what we call incentive legislation, they're often brought in with what we call a sunset clause, meaning it might come in and you say it lasts for 1 year. And the intention is that you would, during that year or that period that the law is in effect, you would gauge the impact. You would say, how successful is it in achieving what we intended? And so when it was done, again, we know about all the controversy of it being sort of selectively put in place. Did it achieve what it was supposed to achieve? I guess the intention was to help people to develop their properties. But what we found was that people who are, by and large, living in the area, if they own the property at all, they did not have the financial wherewithal to, say, make an investment. And so you had 1 or 2 large businesses come in and take advantage of the investment. And you can see some of them if you cruise over the hill, certain areas of over the hill, you can see some big businesses that were able to come in and take advantage of the tax-free incentive. So we felt that that was not achieving its intended consequence. Also implemented was the Small Business Development Act, which allows small businesses to get duty-free, also by the F&M, to get duty-free concessions on things like inventory and vehicles and equipment for their business if you have your small business under $5 million. That applies everywhere. And so we think that's a much more effective tool to bring that sort of relief, particularly to the small business. So we renewed that, and we allowed the other one to expire because it was not having, in our opinion, it was not having its intended consequence. It sounds good, and so sometimes it might be a useful political tool to beat us with, but you have to be able to look at what was the intended consequence, what did you intend it to achieve? Did it achieve those intended outcomes? Did it achieve those outcomes? Long day. And is there a better alternative? And so instead of having 2 pieces of legislation, we continued the small business, which allows small businesses, someone who wants to start up, someone who has a small business already, to bring those things in, bring in inventory, bring in vehicles for use in the business, bring in equipment duty-free. We think that's a better alternative. And I don't have any difficulty saying that they also brought that in, and we continued that one, but the other one we thought given the controversy and the, the uncertainty, we just let that expire.
What about other plans or initiatives to help small businesses that could have been birthed by the PRP?
We continue with our support for the Development Bank, for example. They just secured, I think it's a $30 million a credit facility. That's going to be very impactful for small businesses. We continue our support for the SBDC and all of the other agencies, and we continue to make sure that those under the Small Business Development Program are processed quickly and they don't have a lot of red tape and hoops to go through. Yes, ma'am.
Just want to know where we're at with the corporate income tax.
As a matter of fact, I just came out of a meeting discussing that issue, the issue of this whole OECD suggested global minimum tax, and we have done a study. We have some experts looking at best practice around the world, and so we will be coming in the coming weeks with some suggestions. As you know, we did a study. We had a study done by one of the major accounting firms. They did a report. We released a green paper asking for feedback. We got that feedback. We were now looking at that feedback and now in discussions internally at first about the best way to proceed without a lot of confusion, without increasing the burden on anybody, but being able to capture some elements that we don't presently capture, and mostly in a multilateral layer. So, long story short, within the next few weeks, shortly after the mid-year budget, as we roll up to the budget, you'll be getting more information on where the government wants to go, and we'll be seeking more feedback from particularly the business community on what they think we should do.
Can you say which one of the four options that you're leaning more towards?
I can say that we are leaning firstly at doing the Pillar 2, which is the multinational companies with income of 750 million euros or more. So dealing with those, and so that would not have a whole lot of impact on, if any, on local companies. That's the one we're looking at, because as you know, any sort of change in what we've been doing for so long requires a lot of consultation and feedback.
Any considerations to implementing an income tax?
Personal income tax? No. I said, as a matter of fact, I said that to the experts, is that requires, that's not on our agenda, so let me just leave it right there. At all. I know some people say they prefer it, but they say that now. But that's not on our agenda. It's not a consideration. It's not, I think the IMF, again, in their report, once again suggested that we put an income tax on top earners. That's not in our contemplation at all. As I said in my opening, we thank them for their report. We see what's useful for us. We implement that. Some of these things, that sort of, I was going to say radical, but that sort of fundamental change in the way that we have been operating, from our very existence requires a whole lot of consultation and consensus, and basically everybody has to agree that this is what we're going to do. All right? Mm-hmm.
I know last year the ministry hosted a workshop to introduce finance officers to this system that manages payroll. I think it's the
The Oracle?
Yes, the
Yeah.
Fusion system. We want to know if that has been rolled out as yet.
It's ongoing. It's ongoing. And we can probably at a future date get you an update on it. It is, for many years, a lot of our systems didn't talk to each other, and so this was an attempt to make sure, for example, that public service and the treasury and those, talk to each. The systems, can interact, so that we can reduce manual processes. People can get paid, particularly, I know there's been, for many years, issues of retirees having to wait long times to get their gratuity and the pensions, et cetera. So it's a fundamental development. So it's being rolled out. We can undertake to get you a sort of update on how far it is and the completion date, but it continues.
Final question, I know basically dotting his I's, crossing his T's, the blacklist.
Yeah.
Blacklist. What's the update on that?
The update is we were able to, one of the issue that prevented us from coming off the blacklist last year was being able to exchange information. You might recall that we had an issue with what we call the portal, the portal that we were using. It was not adequate. We had to replace it. At the end of December, we were able to have in place a portal that enabled us to do the exchanges, to exchange all the information with those countries that wanted to exchange with us. The group that oversees that process is something called the Forum on Harmful Tax Practice. Early in January, they looked at the exchanges that we made and gave us a passing mark and said, yes, that's satisfactory. On the 7th, they then communicated that information to another committee called the Code of Conduct Group of the EU, which had a meeting on the 7th of February, which was this last Wednesday. And so they got the information that, we have dealt with that one outstanding matter. There is a meeting of the EU on the 20th of February, which is Tuesday after next, where they will take all of that into consideration. So we are hopeful that with all of those positive reviews, we can get a positive outcome. And so we'll have an update for you shortly after that, around the 21st or so. All right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we got to go back to these meetings.
So I know that you had said that you are optimistic that we'll be able to meet the deficit requirements before the next budget year, right? And I know you also said that we had the boat fee reductions that you're going to make retroactive to the Family Island persons. How is the government planning on making up for that deficit?
That is not, if when we relate that particular matter, the impact of that is not that much in the big scheme of things.
So even if not just to make that, how is the government planning on making
Yeah, what happens is the government financial year starts July 1st and runs to June 30th. Traditionally, what has happened is, the expenses remain basically even, except in sometimes you have larger debt payments in the beginning of the year. But your revenue, the government's sort of biggest revenue months are in anywhere from January, February, March, because that is when you collect things like business license, the real property tax, the bills that go out at the end of the year, people begin to pay the real property tax bills. Motor vehicles are licensed in March. Well, all throughout the year, but the commercial ones are in March. And you have business license, you have bank fees, you have real property tax. So the government's revenue is not spread evenly over the year. There are periods where the revenue is higher, and that's the second half of the year. So I use the example of the game. You might be behind in the first quarter, but you make up before the end. And so we expect that things will pick up during the second half, and that we'll be able to meet and hopefully exceed our targets. All right, but it's not. If we say government is going to make $1 billion this year, it's not divided, by 12, and it's the same every month. There are some months that are higher than others. Example, April is one of the highest. March and April. Okay. All right, folks. Thank you very much once again, and have a good weekend. All right.
Didn't know we could get that much information in 20 minutes. Thank you very much, Minister. If there aren't any other questions on non-related matters? All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for coming, and have a great afternoon and a good weekend.